it's really like burst on the scene in the last few years. I mean, some of us have been working in the biology of aging for 3 decades now, but the reality is that it's become evident over the last 10 years that we have a lot of different strategies that may slow or even reverse aspects of aging. And equally important, we now have new ways of measuring the rate at which people are aging. We call that their biologic age, as opposed to their chronologic age, which is what their passport says. So if you combine the fact that we have strategies to do interventions and ways to measure it now, it really seems like the possibility exists to change the rate of human aging. Yeah, I think that what we're really suggesting is a complete change in medicine, because right now we're too heavily focused on sick care. And what the data suggests to many of the people in the aging field is that it's going to be a lot easier to keep you healthy than it is to put you back together again after you get sick. And a lot of interventions, whether they're lifestyle interventions or drugs, small molecules, supplements, or even things like stem cell therapies, have emerged mostly in animal models that clearly extend the lifespan of the animal, but more importantly, they extend the health span, the time when the animal's healthy and functional. And so if you're a mouse, we've got you already. We can extend your lifespan by 35%, we can keep you healthy longer. The challenge now is to take some of these interventional strategies that work in mice and move them into humans. And that's going to be exciting, but it's also unclear. I mean, how do you measure aging in humans? We can't wait until they die and see if they live longer, so we have to have a better way of doing that. And these biomarkers are starting to provide that. So what we're doing in Singapore now is 6-month studies, taking small molecules, giving them to people that are 45 to 65 and still reasonably healthy, and asking whether we can reverse their biologic age or not. And some of the evidence from, not just from us, but from other groups as well, suggests that may be possible. So imagine being 5 years younger. I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it has a huge impact if we can really do that. I still play around with animal models too. I mean, lots of mice, and we do studies in killifish and worms and yeast, and a lot of the interventional strategies came from those models, but now I think the time is there to validate things in humans and to do it in a way we can scale so that we can move into something like a health district or a community and do widespread interventions to extend health span. Well, this is still wild speculation. You'll hear different answers from different people. I think the most important thing is that when I started in the aging field, a lot of the people, even in the aging field, said, oh, we're never going to do anything about aging. And now everybody's arguing about the magnitude of the effect. And so I would say that it's going to be possible to extend the healthy years of life by 5 to 10 years. Probably not too distant future, maybe even with supplements. We don't know yet for sure. But that's a huge impact already, and that may be the low end. What's possible in the long term, I think all bets are off. But it seems very likely that we can have significant impacts on aging. The biggest question to me is whether we're going to square the curve. In other words, when you look at a survival curve, it goes like this, and the median life expectancy is 75 or 80, and the maximum is 120. By squaring the curve, these interventions, they may get more people to 95 and 100 and living healthy longer, but nobody goes past 120. Or can we break down that maximum barrier? We don't know the answer to that yet, and that may take a while to find out. But that's why we still need to do the basic research to address those questions. Well, first let me talk about the clinical studies a little bit, because it reflects some of the challenges we have. You know, clinical studies have been heavily oriented towards safety, and I understand that. You don't want to hurt someone while you're doing a clinical trial. But I think we misinterpreted a little bit, the Hippocratic Oath. We interpret it as first do no harm, which we then interpret to say if somebody's healthy, we shouldn't be doing anything to them. And I think this is the wrong strategy for people's health. I think if you're ignoring someone, you are harming them. And so we talk about functional capacity, we talk about performance, we talk about protection from disease. These are things we need to be doing throughout the life course, helping people develop the healthy lifestyles when they're young in school, developing interventional strategies that are still largely safe but will help people in their 20s and 30s, maybe looking at drugs that slow or reverse aging in their 40s and 50s. And right now we wait till people get in their 50s and 60s and they have multiple chronic conditions, and then we spend a fortune and keep them sick for a very long time. We need a life course approach to health, and I think we need to reevaluate what that means. So when you go for a clinical study and you say, oh, we're going to recruit healthy people and give them drugs, that people look at you like you're crazy. But I think that's exactly what we need to be doing, realizing that there's no person that's 100% healthy. And maybe we have to define new deficits to target, or maybe we can just say, we're doing prevention, but we have to find a strategy to really do these kinds of studies in humans, because think of it this way: when you're healthy, the homeostatic mechanisms in your body are still working, and preserving that function is going to be a whole lot easier than when you go out of equilibrium, because at that point you're reversing entropy. And that's what we're doing with Alzheimer's and so many of these other diseases. It's such a huge ask to fix all those problems. Let's just not have the problems in the first place, or delay them as long as possible. But we have to find a way to study that clinically, and right now that's still kind of an open question how to do that. I think it's exciting. If I go to a meeting on the biology of aging, I can already give everybody's talk. I don't need to pay attention. But when I go to an economics meeting or a clinical meeting or all kinds of other meetings that aging relates to, I learn a lot more from it. And I think the challenge is that we really speak in different languages. And I was just saying that you hear an economic theory that's based on some assumption about how people age biologically, and that's wrong, then it's maybe going off in the wrong direction, even if you can't evaluate the economics. And on the other hand, I quote economic concepts to people when I give talks, and I don't know what I'm talking about either. So we need channels where we can build that knowledge together in aging, between the basic biologists, the clinicians, the politicians, who are thinking about political or policy decisions that are important for healthy aging, the economists, and so many other groups. And aging is everything, in a way. And so we have to figure out how to create those channels of communication so that we can develop societal plans that are much more associated with healthspan. I went to Singapore about 5 years ago. Because they have a progressive mindset, they really do identify problems ahead of time, and then they try to come up with solutions to those problems. And I think that Singapore really is an ideal place to test run interventional strategies for healthspan, prove that they work, and then export them to other parts of the world, because you have a much more compliant population. I'll give you an example of that. They recently stopped requiring masks outside in Singapore, and I was out of the country, so when I flew back, the first thing I did was walk outside without a mask. I was the only one without a mask. People still wear the mask even after they're not required anymore. It's a different culture, and I think it's an opportunity to really test things where people will comply with suggestions, and you can really look at a community level where things are going to work. And I think that's the concept of this health district that we've been discussing. It's really, how do you take 100,000 people in one region of Singapore and really go to the state-of-the-art strategies to protect their health, to give them not just healthy longevity but productive longevity, and how do you do that? And so it's a progressive idea to really think about a holistic strategy to do that, and to show that you can do it in an economically feasible way and then scale it to all of Singapore. So for us, it's great, because once we do our RCTs and show that some intervention works, then we have a place to scale into the community, and already we have a path toward widespread use. I did all preclinical studies, and now that I'm doing clinical studies, what I don't want is to write some paper that says, oh, this works a little bit, and then it disappears in an academic journal and doesn't cause a change in the health of the society. And so I think there's an avenue to do that in Singapore. So that's what really excites me about it.